Hello, Roadrunners. My name is Enrique Medina, joined by John Rodriguez and Luke Perez. And in this week's episode of Rio Talk, we're going to be discussing the whole situation with the 2020 presidential election and the effect that mail-in voting could have on the election, the situation with mail-in voting, what's going on in different states and things like that, and our overall thoughts on the idea of mail-in voting. And on top of that, we'll also be discussing the recent coronavirus hitting the NFL landscape, see how it'll potentially affect the season. And also we'll get a little bit into the Lakers' recent 2020 NBA championship, the celebration, downtown Los Angeles. And we'll also be discussing briefly the Dodgers' current postseason run. With that said, obviously, the first thing that we want to talk about is mail-in voting across the United States. Obviously, with COVID-19, it's a different situation this year that we've ever truly had before. This is a one-of-a-kind year, to be honest. And, obviously, things are different. Mail-in voting is the new thing that's really about because of COVID-19. And with this 2020 presidential election, I want to get your guys' thoughts on mail-in voting and how it could potentially affect the election in a good way or in a bad way. Do you think it's a safe route to go by? Do you think it's constitutional, you could say, in regards to mail-in voting? Because we know that there are some potential effects with mail-in voting. Let me know some of your guys' thoughts.
I think it's kind of funny how the U.S. decided to go this route with mail voting because with the pandemic hitting, it's they went from all stay indoors, which I really think would have been a better way to vote during the election. You could have done it online, in my opinion. If they really say how dangerous this pandemic is, obviously it's not gone. Obviously the coronavirus is still it's still out there. It's still in the air. You could get it how, the way you could get it, it's many different ways. And I feel like with this mail-in voting, it's no difference really. You're obviously going to, you're touching a mailbox, which everybody has been touching, but it does affect the election because it's almost as if there's a scam because, all these fake mailboxes that people are posting on, social media, it's, it affects it because you don't know whose votes are going through. And it's kind of in a way, it's like a waste, why did you, take your time? Because it's not just about the president, it's about the Senate and stuff and everything else that you can vote for. It can also be in your community as well. So, it's not just about the presidential election. It's what else is going on, in your state, obviously in this country, in your community as well. So it's kind of a waste of time. I just, filled all this information out for my voting to go in, but yet it's honestly it's last minute that they realize it's not going to be counted for because it was just thrown into a trash can basically.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, especially with that part about kind of the situation with local cities and things like that, how things could be different in every state. And the reality is, some states do have more cases than others regarding COVID-19. And because of that, some states, pretty much the only way to go about it is mail-in voting. Places, of course, here like California, there's pretty much no other option other than mail-in voting because of that. But obviously in other states, they are bringing about the option of voting in person, depending on the state, of course. But there are some states where you can only vote through mail-in voting. And with that being said, I know, Luke, you had mentioned earlier, but tell us a little bit about what you think might happen in regards to that situation being different in each state, in regards to maybe even potentially having a delay with maybe even the election.
Yeah, I was just saying, I mean, like if every state has different rules and we all have to do it a different way, like I just feel like it could just delay the whole process of, the election and like, the outcome of like what will happen. But hopefully, uh, the government and like officials could like just like figure it out. And all that matters is that we could get our vote in. Like everyone's saying, like the our votes count now, and I really hope that they believe that, so they would like make it a way that it's accessible for all of us to like get in our votes without any like problems happening. So,
Of
but
course.
you're right about tampering. Like that could always be a problem as well, and like different state rules. So who knows? I really hope that everything could just run smoothly. That the election process could just happen.
Of course. And, going on with that point, how you mentioned our vote counting so much, and especially with this election, a lot of people are, emphasizing the importance of this election specifically in 2020. Many are saying that it's one of the biggest elections we've ever had. If not, it could be the biggest election we've ever had. And the fact that the coronavirus COVID-19 has affected, our nation as a whole, it's really made this whole situation that much more pretty much hectic. There's almost no other way to put it. But with that being said, do you guys really think mail-in voting could potentially favor one nominee winning versus another?
I mean, the fake, drop off stations kind of like show that,
Hmm.
uh, like clearly, like, you know, either like whatever side of the political spectrum could pull something like that to help their candidate. And so, you could just hope that, people will be more sensible and like, not be like you do cheating like that or and mess up everyone's vote. But who knows? Like, it's really important to vote and people are
Oh, for sure.
In many ways,
Um,
it can also be like like a setup in a way, but yeah, or like maybe they're doing this fake trash, these fake mailboxes because they're trying to do it in favor for a certain candidate. Obviously, we don't know for which one, but it depends
mhm.
like what the community is and who the community is in favor for to be our next president. Or like I said, like it may not even just be about the president. Maybe around what's in the community. Vote for this number, vote for that number. But obviously, it's obviously going to be a big impact to um, this country and maybe even to that community, to that specific community of where these fake you know um, voting ballots are at. So yeah.
Yeah, and you guys bring up a great point, security and things like that. Um, it's going to be a big thing in regards to this election with regards to mail-in voting. So with that, I want to, say to you, the viewers at home, make sure all of you do your proper research. Make sure you know which dates correspond to your state. Make sure you look at who you're going to vote for which position, whether it's in your local community or for the president of the United States. Make sure you're informed. Make sure you're informed about voting locations and where you can vote, where you could drop off your voting ballots, whether that is in a mailbox. Make sure you do your research to ensure that your vote is counted, and also check out if there is any other locations where you could just drop off your mail-in vote there, instead of having to go into an actual post office to actually turn it in. Make sure you're all informed, and make sure you do your own proper research to make sure that your vote is counted for. Because with this election, voting is always super important, and definitely with these crazy times, it's going to be even more important. With that being said, let's switch off to another topic, the NFL and the coronavirus. Obviously, we know the coronavirus has been affecting a lot of the sports. Definitely, a lot of the sports around the world and here in the United States have been affected by the coronavirus in many ways. We've seen the NBA implement a bubble, Major League Baseball implementing a bubble during the postseason. But in the NFL so far, already through, maybe a fourth of the season so far, a third of the season, we've already seen a lot of problems and a lot of situations where games have had to have gotten canceled because of COVID situations where a player tests positive and, the games have to get pushed back a few days because of that. So what are some of your guys' thoughts on the coronavirus situation? Should there be maybe a new plan implemented at some point, maybe for a playoff run or things like that? Or what are some things you guys think can be done better about the situation?
Well, it almost seems as if the NFL has, it has the worst. It's the sport that has the most cases with the coronavirus, and it kind of seems like, basketball, they were able to work something out, and yet they didn't. They did have maybe like very little, but it's not as bad as the NFL. Major League Baseball, they were able to shorten the season, and I think, in my opinion, it seems as if baseball is one of the safest sports because they're more than 6 feet apart. You got center field, right field. I feel as if basketball was one of like a riskier sport because they're all close together. They're all playing defense on one another. Trying to guard somebody. And football, I think it's like probably like right behind basketball because you have to get pretty close. You have to make those tackles. You have to guard a wide receiver as a cornerback. You have to do all these things, and you're pretty close to these players. But the staff as well, like you look at the bench and everybody's standing up, they're all close to each other. They're all they are wearing like a special mask. Like I know like some of them have like this like special face right here to cover their mouth. It's clear, but it's got like a little hole, but still like that's not going to help anything if it has access to like your mouth. If you breathe it in, like that's how you could get the virus. But it seems as if like the NFL might have to come up with a new plan because it seems as if almost every week they have to cancel a specific game. Today's Thursday. Usually they'll have a Thursday night football match, but this past Tuesday, I think it was like one of the first football games that they had on Tuesday night. So they they're not gonna play football on Thursday, but they were able to push it to Tuesday, but we'll see what happens. I think that they will need to come up with a new plan. And if it's not going to get any better, then obviously I think that they're going to have to probably do what baseball's doing in the playoffs, like just keep a specific stadium for like a certain division. I think that's working out for baseball really well. It seems like, teams are playing as if it was pretty much normal, but we'll see what the NFL is going to decide on this.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point there with regards to the proximity in being 6 feet apart. Obviously, with the NFL and the NBA, people are much closer together. But if you want to touch on this a little bit, Luke, I know with the NBA, there's a lot less people you need to worry about, a lot less coaches, a lot less players. And obviously, with the NFL, it's different because you have a sideline that's typically full of a lot of players, a lot of backups, special teams, defensive players, and offensive players. So there's a lot of people to be accounted for with the National Football League. So, Luke, just what do you think are some of like the problems with that, with so many people needing to be accounted for?
It makes it a whole lot difficult. I mean, that's for sure. I know like a lot of fans are like, oh, just do a bubble like the NBA. And like realistically, that's like super hard to do, especially like 32 team league like the NFL. Like it's not just players you have to take into consideration. There's practice squad players. There's the other men on the roster that are on the bench and get subbed in. There's coaching staff. There's trainers. Just medical staff. Too many people, and just for one franchise to take account for. And it's not like you have a smaller group and staff like how it is in baseball or maybe NBA as well. So a bubble is like really out of the question because of so many people that involved in like one particular team. But the NBA, I mean the NFL, I wish they could have done things better. Like I know that it was a smart move to cancel the preseason games, to limit contact and make sure that the teams have more time together. That way, they're used to each other, and their own practice facility is safe. But they went through the season acting as if no corona cases would happen, and now this is the cause of it. Having postponed games, like no Thursday night football for a long time, and having the first ever Tuesday night football. It's a pretty crazy.
For sure.
One thing I know the Pittsburgh Steelers had a problem with was that they had a bye week coming up, and now they kind of had two because they're supposed to play the Tennessee Titans, which was the first team that had a coronavirus outbreak,
Yeah.
and they ended up having like two bye weeks like in a row, and so like, and the NFL was like, hey, so is that like two bye weeks or like what's up? We're not going to be able to play for like 3 weeks, and
I feel
it
like
does makes it
that
difficult.
I feel like with that, it kind of also gives like the team to kind of get prepared for like just for them to practice more, go over through a couple plays. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Because Tennessee, I think that they had a pretty decent team, and yet they were one of the teams that had a breakout. And this is another thing that the NFL needs to take into consideration. And the NFL is one. Well, I think it's probably the first sport to allow fans back into the stadium. Baseball just did it, but now I'm pretty sure Tennessee was one of the teams to allow a certain amount of fans into the stadium. I know Dallas has been doing that. Washington, I'm pretty sure, has been allowing fans as well. But that's another thing that they need to take in consideration, because if they're allowing fans into a stadium where these players could be affected with the virus, it seems like that it could just be up in the air in the stadium as well, and that's something that they really need to take into consideration. Because if the Tennessee Titans have had this the virus, I don't know specifically which players do have it or if they have it, but the Titans are one of the teams that to be confirmed that they had like a major outbreak, and they are I'm pretty sure like 90% that that's one of the teams that have been allowing fans into the stadium, and that's something that they really need to take into consideration.
Yeah, like
In
every
the
state almost has like a team, and like, it makes it hard. Like they have different rules. Like Cowboys have like 25% audience, and then the Miami Dolphins could have 25%, and like I think Kansas City as well.
Mm-hmm.
It gets right. Like all
Yeah.
these like different teams are like allowed to have fans, but other teams aren't even. It does make it tricky, and it's not you can't help. No, you can't
Yeah, for
go
sure.
because then you're messing up state law.
Yeah, and it's really gonna range depending on the state. Definitely California being more stricter than, let's say, somewhere like Missouri, where the Chiefs play in Kansas City. It's gonna definitely be different. And with that being said, in your guys' shortest response possible, do you guys think there should be a bubble implemented in a potential NFL playoffs?
Mm.
I don't think it will work. There's too many people involved in
Mm,
a football franchise besides a team,
A lot
besides
more
players.
to really take care of, huh?
Yeah, it's too much. Too many people.
What would you say, John?
Yeah, I would probably say that it's too risky. You got a lot of people to worry about. You know, in my opinion, it kind of seems as if like you're putting into a lot of people's lives in risk, lives on the line in a way,
Mhm.
because you don't know if it's gonna, like how bad it's gonna be if they catch this virus. So that's something that they just need to be really considerate about.
Now, that's definitely, something I'm sure that'll be discussed intensely as the season goes on, but we'll see how that gets itself situated. But moving on into another topic, we just had the Lakers clinch their 17th NBA title, beating the Miami Heat in the 2020 NBA Finals in 6 games from the bubble in Orlando. But we obviously saw a lot of celebration out in downtown Los Angeles. I personally could say from personal experience, I did go out there I did not go specifically outside the Staples Center with people, but I was in a car very close to the Staples Center, almost pretty much at the Staples Center the night that they clinched the title. And I could tell you for sure, it was crazy. It was hectic, but, everybody was just there for the same reason. We're all proud of our Lakers, and it's something that, we haven't had in a while. So let me know your guys' thoughts on the whole celebration and just about the Lakers championship as a whole.
Well, the Lakers really did deserve to win this championship. For many reasons. I think that they were. I think everybody saw it kind of coming. They had like two superstars. Like a team with like LeBron James, Anthony Davis. That's like 1/4 of an all-star team right there in a way. And they are tied most with the Boston Celtics with 17, and for most NBA championships. But I think that LA took it a little bit too extreme, because you had over 70 people arrested, 76 to be exact. At the Los Angeles Police Department announced that 30 buildings were damaged. Most of them were graffitied, but most of those buildings were heavily damaged. About a good number of police people or cops were probably injured, and one guy got stabbed for saying an unlikely comment about Kobe Bryant. So I think that LA just took it a little too extreme. I get it; they're excited. It's their team; they're happy about it, but it was just a little too extreme.
Your thoughts, Luke?
Well, it was a pretty emotional series, winning it all. It's been 10 years since the Lakers won a championship, and then along with the passing of Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. Obviously LA had a lot to celebrate. I really wish it could have got handled a lot better, but just a really emotional year and season it's been for LA and Laker fans all alike.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm glad it's something to bring the city together, but with times like these right now and everyone needing to stay safe, like I wish we all like people could have celebrated in a lot, safe and you know manner. Yeah, like all those things that you talked about, like police having to get involved, people getting injured, like that shouldn't happen. Like people like going out without masks, like shouldn't happen. But it sports fans are crazy. We know how teams could celebrate, especially when you have a rich history, like with the Lakers. Of course,
Of
people are gonna
course.
celebrate it. So
Without a doubt.
not saying I was surprised, like people went out in the streets and celebrated, but I'm definitely surprised about the outcome, the things that happened during the
Of course.
celebration.
And to add on to that, Lakers owner Jeannie Buss and the organization as a whole has stated that, when they can possible, they want to try to get some sort of a celebration, some sort of a parade to see, obviously, the Lakers and, everybody part of that championship team. That way the whole city could celebrate together. But they did mention, of course, when it's actually safe to do so. So we'll see how things go with that. And to switch off to our final topic, we have the Dodgers currently in the National League Championship Series facing off against the Atlanta Braves. Today, currently, the Dodgers were defeated in Game 4 of the National League Championship Series. The Dodgers now face a 3-1 deficit in the NLCS against the Braves. And based on what we've seen from games 1 through 4, we've seen glimpses of the Dodgers offense coming alive. But as a whole, throughout the series, it's failed to come through in certain situations where it matters most. And the Braves offense has been more consistent as the series gone on. So what's your thoughts on that? Do you think the Dodgers can make a comeback? Let me know what you guys think.
I mean, it's been seen in multiple sports that a team with a 3-1 deficit that they're able to come back and win. I think it's possible. I think their longest winning streak this year was 8 wins, so they just need to win 3 more to continue on what's really interesting about this postseason, to be very specific, is that one, they're not playing in their stadium that they're used to, so the field's more deeper. Home runs that should be home runs are not. They're just
Yeah,
regular pop
sure.
outs at this field. Um, and you also have to keep in mind that they only played 60 games this year,
Of course.
and the league was divided into the West and the East. So the Dodgers didn't get a chance to play against the Braves. They're not used to this team. If this was a
Of
regular
course.
season, they would know the pitchers, the types of pitches. They would get familiar with the team. At least about 6 to 12 games they would play in the regular season. But with this pandemic, baseball was lucky enough to get a 60-game season, which was it was fortunate. But here we are in the postseason, and same thing with the East. The Astros. Um, the Astros have never played with the who are they playing against, the Tampa Bay Rays. This is like the first time they're playing with each other.
Yeah.
Uh, so this postseason is very different. I think that the Dodgers their pitching, they need to work on the pitching as a whole. It's not necessarily their starting pitchers. Today Kershaw, I think he did great out there. He threw 5 innings, gave up like 1 to 3 runs, which this isn't the 2014 Kershaw that people want to remember. It's been 4 years since he's or 4 to 6 years since he's won a Cy Young, since he's won an MVP. So he's not like at the top tier position player that everybody
That he
wants
is.
him to be. Yeah. So I can't necessarily say that it's the starting pitcher's fault. The bullpen needs to work. Baez needs to pick up his pitches. Jensen needs to stop getting people on base, getting runs in, as well as that they. I think that the offense needs to pick up their
Yeah, and honestly, you bring up a great point with that because it's been a little bit of mix of bad timeliness with the bullpen. Prior to the series, I know Joe Kelly had stated that this is probably, or Joe Kelly actually stated straight out, this is the best bullpen and the deepest bullpen I've ever been a part of, and that's a really big thing to say because he was a part of the 2018 Boston Red Sox who actually beat the Dodgers to win the 2018 World Series. So that was high praise, but it hasn't been coming through so far in this series. And like you mentioned, probably the biggest thing affecting the Dodgers right now is the offense. Obviously, they exploded with 15 runs in Game 3, but other than that, Games 1 and 4, they were cold. They picked it up a little bit at the end in Game 2, but as a whole, throughout the game, they weren't able to really pick up their starter, and because of that, they find themselves in a 3-1 deficit. So with that said, we'll see what will happen. We've seen instances where teams have come back from a 3-1 deficit before. We've seen it a lot in recent history with the Cavs coming back from a 3-1 deficit to defeat the Golden State Warriors. That was, of course, in the NBA. We've seen the Cubs in Major League Baseball in the World Series come back from a 3-1 lead to beat the Cleveland Indians and defeat their 108-year curse without a championship. And we even saw it this year in the bubble with the Clippers blowing a 3-1 lead against the Denver Nuggets in the second round of the playoffs. So it'll definitely be interesting to see. We know this team is capable of so much. We know the power the offense has, the depth of the starting pitching, and the depth of the team as a whole. So it's definitely going to get tested with these next, well, specifically with Game 5. We'll see how the depth will be tested, and we'll truly see what this team is made of and see if they can make a comeback. But, we'll see what happens. Baseball is a very unpredictable sport sometimes, and, only one game at a time is what the Dodgers could truly say at this moment, because they're down 3-1, and with one loss, they're going to be eliminated from the playoffs again for the 8th straight year. And with that being said, that'll conclude this episode of Rio Talk. I want to thank you, John, and you, Luke, for joining in this episode. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at El Paisano Media. Again, I'm Enrique Medina, joined by John Rodriguez and Luke Perez. Thank you guys for joining in.